Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Appreciate you guys coming back. If you're new to the channel, appreciate you stopping by and checking it out. In today's video, what we have is some stories from the Pacific Northwest. We have two quick stories from a viewer, D.A. Owens. He sent in one about his grandpa a long time ago, one of the original homesteaders over on the Oregon coast. He also sent in one about himself where he found some Bigfoot tracks. After that, I'm going to give you a story about a Marine that was stalked by a Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest. Wait till you hear that. All right, so let's get to it. Okay, this first story is by D.A. Owens. He sent it in and it's about his grandfather. So here we go. My grandpa was one of the first people to homestead in the Gold Beach area in 1887. Gold Beach was simply called Gold back then. He came from Kansas in 1882 with his wife by wagon and oxen. After homesteading his property, he and several other homesteaders went twice a year to stock up on deer meat for the winter. The hunting trip, they decided to go into Wild Horse Country, which is some 25 miles inland from the coast. They always took several days to do their hunting and covered huge swaths of country while hunting. On this trip, they ran into heavy snow on Wild Horse Mountain. While on the mountain, they found several deer dead with no meat taken from them. The strange thing was all of these deers had their necks broken so bad that they were nearly decapitated. No sign of bullet damage anywhere on the bodies. Gramps had never seen this before in all his years of hunting. On the third day, the weather was terrible with wind and rain and snow showers. They broke camp thinking to go to a lower elevation, thinking the deer had moved lower down. Late the afternoon, they reached Wild Horse Prairie, where they found two more dead deer with their necks broken. After a short conversation with his hunting partners, they decided to leave this area because something just wasn't right. No wildlife had been seen anywhere, and it was much too quiet as no sign of birds or grouse. As they followed a game trail down the mountain, Gramps said they came upon a foul smell that really excited the horses. At about that time, Gramps said some kind of wild man looking animal came out from behind a large boulder on the trail and tried to pull Gramps off of his horse. Thank God the horse was already spooked and lunged away before the creature could get a good hold on Gramps. Gramps said the animal was as big as a grizzly bear standing on two legs. He thought it was nearly 9 feet tall and very broad, but said he was too scared to be sure. He said the face on this animal was a cross between a human and ape-like. It ran off running on two legs and was completely covered with black hair except around the eyes. He never went back into that country ever again. My grandfather gave me his diary after his death, and the full account was in the diary under November 11th through the 23rd, 1903. Go to Google Earth and type in Curry County, and it will take you to Wild Horse Prairie, where they broke camp on that encounter day. Okay, that was a crazy story by his gramps, huh? Imagine that. Imagine Bigfoot trying to grab you off your horse like that from behind a boulder. I mean, just imagine the feelings that would go through your body, like, instantly. You know what I mean? Like, the shock and the fear and the adrenaline. Man, that would be something else. All right, so D.A. Owens also sent in a quick other story about something that occurred to him. So I'll go ahead and tell you guys that also. Here we go. I'll start out saying I have spent all my life working, hunting, and fishing in the wilderness. I was born and raised in Coos County, Oregon. I started driving logging trucks at the age of 16 and drove them for 45 years before retiring. In the early 1970s, I was hauling logs off Iron Mountain up on the Agnes Pass in Curry County when I pulled over to take care of nature. While I was standing outside the truck, I noticed something weird while looking down at a little stream beside the road. A trail of very large footprints had come down off the hill and apparently stopped to get a drink out of the small creek. The footprints were very deep in the soil, so I put my boot down beside them to measure my weight, which is 290 pounds at that time, and I barely made half the depth of the large ones. I wear size 11 boots, and these tracks were 18 by 7.5. I never saw what made them, but suspected a Bigfoot may have left the prints. D.A. Owens. Okay, that story by D.A. Owens was kind of crazy, huh? His grandfather. Well, right here is Wild Horse Prairie. Right here, guys. This is Wild Horse Prairie right here. And there's a little campground, and I'll put some pictures to it. But this is the prairie where his grandfather had that encounter. And this is the area that happened. And give me a second and we'll go visit the area where he had his own encounter also. But I just thought I'd let you guys see right there. Wild Horse Campground. This is the Wild Horse Prairie right there. So it's a pretty interesting story. Imagine almost being yanked off your horse. I mean, that would be crazy to me. Just like I said before, just imagine the things that would go through your mind and your body and maybe your shorts. You know what I mean? If that would happen to you. So, all right, let's get to that other location of the D.A. Owens encounter where he saw his footprints. All right, so right here is where D.A. Owens had his own encounter when he stopped to take a leak right up on top of this pass here, Agnes Pass. So this is his Bigfoot encounter location, and you see on both sides of that pass right there how steep those ravines are. So you could just imagine Bigfoot using those right there on Fives Creek and on the other side coming up and just using that pass to get over onto the other side. So D.A. Owens, we really appreciate you sending those stories in to us. Any other viewers out there that have their own stories, you guys can go ahead and message me on my WILLSTAR Productions Facebook page, and we will try to get these videos made for you guys. I know sometimes it takes courage to come out with your story because a lot of people won't believe you guys, but believe me, I believe you guys. I've had my own encounter. I wasn't really that huge of a believer before I had my encounter, but that changed the whole thing. So I believe you guys. You guys send your stories. You guys send the locations. I'll show them. I'll share the stories. We'll get this out there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. All that good stuff. Oh, but I got something special for you. I have another story about an ex-Marine and a police officer, ex-police officer, the same person here, was tracked and hunted by a Bigfoot. That's coming up right now. Let's get to it. Okay, this next story is about an ex-Marine who was a deputy sheriff at the time in Oregon, and he had an encounter where a Bigfoot actually was tracking him and hunting him. Now, I've got this interview from the Paranormal Witness. That was a television show where they had his story on it. So I have a written interview here that I'm going to read to you, and then I also have the audio from his interview on that show, and I'll leave the link for the show and all that also for you guys to watch. All right, so here we go. Can you describe what you saw? What I saw was a humanoid shape approximately 8 to 10 feet tall, covered in fur, with a conical-shaped head. Its neck wasn't visible. It was like the neck of an NFL linebacker on steroids. Where was it? It was at Tam MacArthur Rim. I was going to revisit the grave of a friend I'd helped bury 20 years earlier. It had nothing to do with looking for Bigfoot. I saw what believed to be a person while I was walking uphill, and it was walking downhill. I was a lawyer and also a policeman, and I was worried that the weapon I was carrying would scare it. So I unsnapped the keeper of my belt and moved the gun to my hip. When I looked back up, there was 20 to 30 feet between us. I had an RCA dog moment where I tilted my head to one side like, huh? And it mimicked me. I knew for sure then that it was intelligent. My first thought was to reach for my weapon, but guns in Class 3 holsters are very hard to get out. You have to pull at exactly the right place, and because I had moved it earlier, I couldn't get the gun out without taking my eyes off of it. That's when it took off and I lost sight of it. What happened after you lost sight of it? I thought about it and said to myself, I have to find out what the hell that is. But I couldn't find tracks, couldn't smell anything, and after about a quarter mile, I felt like I was being watched. It was getting darker much faster than I thought it would, and I didn't have a flashlight, so I shot an azimuth and headed back to the car. That's when I heard a noise that was like a claymore mine or something. I hadn't heard it since I was in the Marine Corps, As soon as I would move, I'd hear it, and as soon as I'd stop, it would stop. I got downhill, and I saw a doe. She wasn't scared of me at all. Then her nose started to twitch. She cranked her head in the direction of the snaps, and then ran frantically in the other direction. What did you decide to do then? Well, what then happened, I ran as fast as I could towards the car. It was only a quarter to a half mile downhill and fairly open forest. I kept hearing the cracks as I ran, and it got to within 10 feet of me. I did not want to look back, though. I fully expect I was going to get snapped in two. When I got to the car, I had to open it with the keys, then get in and made a 3 or 4 point turn. For the next 15 or 20 minutes, I thought that this car was not good protection. I had stopped smoking 7 or 8 years earlier, and the first thing I did was stop and get a pack of cigarettes. Did you tell anyone what happened? The sheriff for whom I'm served made it very clear that sightings like this occur on the east side of the Cascades, but he said, don't write a report. This country has more cows than people, and the ranchers and the farmers don't want the Portland or San Francisco going Sasquatch hunting and shooting a cow instead. Wow, so that's crazy. So that was the written report, and now here's the audio of him giving this interview also. And remember, this comes from the show Paranormal Witness, so I'll leave that link in the description below. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that musical interlude with the local images. Those images that you guys see, all the outdoor images, excluding animals or trucks and things like that, but all the outdoor images you see are always images from these local areas where these occurrences are happening. That's where those images are from. So that's why I show them to you guys. Hope you guys are liking them. Okay, this next part where he gives this audio interview, I've gotten this from the television show. Now it might sound a little bit choppy, but that's because I edited it as far as cutting out all the dramatic music and sound effects and all that other stuff. I did not remove any of his words, anything like that. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get to it.
I saw something I can't explain. I don't like the idea of not being able to explain it. Back in 1997, I got a call from a friend of mine who was also the elected sheriff in a rural Oregon county. He knew that I'd been a certified police officer, and I had been in the Marine Corps, so he asked me if I wanted to be a deputy sheriff. I jumped at the chance. At the time, I was fit. At the present time, I certainly am not. On this particular day, I was early getting off shift. It was one of the prettiest days I can ever remember seeing in the Cascade Mountains. It made me want to take a hike. I've been walking uphill for 2 hours at least. It was taking a long time because of the terrain. I decided to find a route that would get me into a more open area. When I looked through my compass to take that measurement, I was totally shocked. I saw a person standing there, but it was clearly not a human being. This thing had a human-like shape to it and a clear place for the eyes and the nose and the mouth, but it wasn't a person. He had his eyes directly on me. The weirdest thing happened. I just involuntarily cocked my head to one side. He mimicked me. Exactly. He was smart. I instinctively reached around to get my weapon. He ran away so fast, it seemed impossible. Certainly physically impossible for a human. I was so curious that I had to check it out. I could see most of a wide open area, and I was looking everywhere. There was nothing there. I decided to look for tracks. I couldn't find a track anywhere. I carried on walking for a while, but I was feeling a little nervous. It was darker than it should be for me to get back to the car before dark, and I didn't have a flashlight. I realized I wasn't going to make it unless I turned around right then, so I did. I decided to take a different route so that I put some space between myself and whatever that was. I was looking to my left because that's the area that he'd gone, and that's when I heard it. It was as loud as some guns when they go off. It was a big tree. The snap came from my right. It was impossible. He'd circled me. The idea that I couldn't see him, but he could see me, made me very uncomfortable. That's just a prescription for an ambush. That's when I heard a second snap. He wasn't just watching me or running away from me. He was tracking me. It flashed through my mind that what I had seen was big enough to snap me the same way it was snapping those trees. I had been in the Marine Corps. I had police service. I don't scare easily. I am scared to death. He started to get closer as the sun went down. I knew because the snap started getting closer. It was hunting me. Getting closer and closer like a hunter, but staying invisible to the prey. If you can't see what's out there, you can't fight it. You can't even run from it. You don't know which direction to run now because he's circled you. Maybe you run right into his arms. You don't know. I was rushing down the hill, and all of a sudden, there is a deer standing in front of me. Didn't have any fear of humans at all. She snapped her head over in the direction that I'd been watching, where the snaps had been coming from. I've scanned the whole tree line. Didn't see anything. No sound, nothing. She smelled the air with her head up, and then she bolted in the opposite direction as fast as I've ever seen a deer move. I felt the hair on the back of my neck go up. I knew I was being watched. It was just so close, and it was so obvious that it didn't want me there. I was only about 2 minutes away from the car if I ran real fast. So I did. I heard snaps again, and this time they were really close. I was convinced that I was going to die, and that I was going to die in a very bad way. When I finally saw my car, I was hearing snaps very close, but they weren't frequent, and as I got real close to the car, they stopped entirely. I remember now thinking those snaps have stopped because he's right behind me and he's gonna grab me. I started hitting the button for the automatic release of the lock. It's not going to open in time. My heart was starting to beat faster. I want to get steel between me and whatever that thing is. I felt fear that I wasn't going to get that far. I put the key in the ignition. It wouldn't start. It was like, what else can go wrong? The sense of relief that I felt was real good. First thing I wanted to do was have a cigarette. I didn't tell anybody but the sheriff that I served for. I didn't think he would believe me. He did believe me. He said they get reports of big, hairy, unknown animals up there all the time. He told me, don't write a report, don't talk about it. So I didn't. What I saw was physical. It was some kind of living being. And in my experience, living beings have to multiply in some way. That means there's more of them, and I don't know how many. But I do know that I'm not going back there.
Wow, that was crazy. Imagine that. Imagine being stalked and hunted by a Bigfoot like that. And you know, that guy was an ex-Marine, a deputy sheriff, all that good stuff. You know, he's not just some random dude out in the woods. You know, he knows his stuff. And also, I want to say thanks again to D.A. Owens for those stories about his grandpa and his own encounter. That was crazy too. So if you guys are new to the channel and you guys liked what you saw, hit that subscribe button for me. How about it? That notification bell. Everybody, if you guys liked the video, hit that like button for me. Appreciate it. Leave me some comments below. Let me know what you thought about these stories. As usual, remember, where there's a WILLSTAR, there's a way. We'll talk to you guys later. See ya.